Okay, so today I'm going to take you through the quick links of WisePay. As you can see, it's just this section here. Now, as we say previously on a few of our calls to the schools, there's sort of three steps or three different parts of WisePay. Now, obviously, the first part is the modules themselves. The second part is the quick link section, and the third part are the tabs at the top and the user parent view. So today I'm going to take you through the second section of WisePay, which is the quick links from start to finish, and go through each of these tabs and what they do. So to jump straight into it, under the quick links, the first section we have is the start and end of year administration. Now, really, if we select this tab, this just gives you lots of information for your new academic year and what is needed by you at the school. So bear in mind, obviously, it's just the leavers process, which is a sort of a manual process to mark all of the leavers if they're no longer in the school and they've come to the end of their school year, is to mark them as leavers if they are leaving the school. However, obviously, if there are students there that are just moving up a year, then the year groups will go up automatically via your MIS system. So they should move up each year. So you won't have to do anything there really. But really what we've done is we've added lots of information to the start and end of year administration. So this could potentially be sending new students via a template. So again, if you don't have an MIS system at the school and you're doing it via manual template, this just give you some information of what we would wish for you guys to send. Obviously, we have the student management information system. So if you do have an MIS and you're running your student data through Group Call Exporter or WAND, then please take note of this section here, and it will just give you some information around moving your students up through the academic years. Obviously, if you're changing MIS systems, then it's a really good article to read. Obviously, we do need some sort of notification. We sort of say sort of 2 weeks to a month prior to moving MIS systems, just so that we know that when we're running that student data, it does not duplicate from your original MIS system to, say, your new MIS system. Now, existing student accounts, this will be when we're incrementing pupils into the new school year class. So it could potentially be that actually throughout the year you may have new students attend. Now, if they're not on your MIS system, we do have an incrementing pupils template that can also be used. So there's lots of information here around that. We do also have the options to click here to confirm that the actions have been taken. So at the start and end of year process, what we'd like, if possible, is just to make sure that you've read through all of these and just click to confirm that this has been done. So just to show you as an example, if I select the please select here option and I tick that, that will just disappear, and obviously you understand that you've read the new students via a template and this has all been completed and actioned. So again, with this one, if we select this option here, we've completed that, that can be removed. Obviously, for enrolment and pre-admission student accounts, there's lots of information around this. So again, just adding pre-admissions with Group Call Exporter onto WisePay, making sure that with the pre-admissions they have an active date and they're showing as on roll so that they can pull through to WisePay. Again, if you need a template for your pre-admissions, here's a little article on what to do. So again, we charge for the pre-admissions. Obviously, if you have a token, brilliant. And there's just lots of information around this. Obviously, if they have cash as catering, if there's catering top-ups of pre-admission pupils, there's some information around this also. An enrolment process for colleges. So obviously, if you're a college and you've got an enrolment process, then it's definitely worth clicking on this information here, and it will give you some information as to how we'd bring those pupils across. Obviously, staff and administrator accounts. Every sort of academic year, there are lots of moves and changes around staff and admin. It could be that potentially staff have left. So it's just some information around, does the new staff need WisePay training, or do you have someone in-house that can complete WisePay training with them? And again, if people have left, just to make WisePay aware so that we can send you a new administrator account rather than say the new administrator is using an old administrator account where they could potentially be transactions from a previous staff member there. So it's just really to get in contact with us and make us aware if there are any changes. So the management of leavers process, again, these are just articles around the leavers process, marking a leaver so that they will then appear in the archive folder. And again, it could potentially be that there may be leavers, however, they still have payments to make or they're in debt. So there is some information around that also, and refunds for leavers. So again, if it's Cash's Catering or a trip that maybe didn't go ahead, but they've now left the school, it just gives you some information around refunding the leavers also. If we scroll down, we've got a lot of information around audience groups and distribution lists, and just updating year-based audience groups and distribution lists. So again, as the students move up and through the academic year, just updating that audience group and making sure all the correct pupils are in the correct audience groups. Now, there's a lot of information around meals and catering. It could potentially be that it doesn't all need to be read by yourselves, depending on if you're using Millwise Plus or if you're using, say, Cash's Catering, or if you just have menu changes around primary schools. Then it would be great for you to just go through and have a little read of the information there. Now, bear in mind, this doesn't have to be read on a sort of a weekly, monthly basis. This is only really for the start of the new year and obviously the end of the academic year. But preferably, we would say you should start really looking at this. If you've got pre-admissions, really you should start looking at this sort of May, June, ready for July before the school close for summer term. Now, products and services, this is just taking you around the expiry dates of products and services. So where schools may potentially have an expiry date for, say, a menu or a trip, just make sure that you've checked through all your expiry dates on the products, and just to make sure that the expiry date doesn't go out, because what could potentially happen, schools in the past have put an expiry date as, say, for example, the 20th of July 2020. And when they come back in September, they're no longer able to top up or make a payment because of the expiry date. So just go through and check the expiry dates of all your products. Again, bank accounts. So if there are bank account changes, there's some information on how to contact us, how to get a new bank account added onto the system. WisePay will need to be involved with that. So there is some information around that as well. Now, school and college details. Now, the infrastructure for the school and college, this could be changes to the organisation's network. It could be there's changes to the organisation's website. So again, if there's a few bits of information there that could be usable for you as well. General help and guidance. Now, this is just troubleshooting problems, logging in with student accounts and merging accounts. Now, the reason why we've added this one on there, because it does often get asked if parents can merge accounts and how do they unmerge accounts. So although we have merging accounts on the parent view to enable them to merge their own accounts, we do get asked that a lot. So we've just also added that to the general help and guidance, and that's really around merging accounts as well. So all of that information is all added within the start and end of school year administration, and that's something to look at obviously at the start and end of every academic year. If I go back to dashboard home, and we've got the dashboard access control. Now, the dashboard access control, if I select this option, it's just going to give me a pop-up, and it's going to give me all the administrators that are currently showing for this school. And obviously at the moment this is a demo school, so we don't actually have any administrators on there. However, for your school or any potential other school, you will have probably 4 to 6 administrators on there. So you'll see the administrator's email address, and it will just give their access and their email to say that they are an administrator. Obviously, if you want to add administrators on and you want to make any changes, then you can contact support at WisePay. And if you want to view only accounts, we can give you view only accounts where obviously teachers maybe just want to view the transactions on a trip, and just sort of view the trips as a parent. Then we can also give view only accounts, and we do those in batches of 10. So where you may have any administrators, or you're not sure how many administrators you have on WisePay, or how many you have active, then please just select the dashboard access control and it will give you the information of everyone that has access to WisePay from the dashboard perspective. So if we close that tab, now we come down to the banking side. Now the banking tab, really only say 2 to 3 administrators will have access to the banking tab. This is really just for the finance section of WisePay. So if I select the banking tab, this will give us the banking options. If I select the drop down, we have lots of different information here. So we've got the bank account settings and bank account statements, as well as bank account statement for date range. So if you want to search for a bank account statement by date range, this will be the one to use. The create paying in slip, or to search for a paying in slip that's been created. We also have batch number summaries. So again, if you do have batch numbers or batch dates when the payments have been made or paid into your school's account, you can have a look at the batch dates. And we also have unbanked options. So anything that's been unbanked. So this is all, or we can break it down into sections. So any unbanked cash that needs to go through, or any unbanked checks or uncleared items. So it really just generates a report of all that information there. Now, we do also have Income Manager. The Income Manager is slightly different to the banking, and I'll take you through that one next because they are fairly similar, but the banking tab will only really be used by the finance staff. So if I close this and return to the WisePay dashboard, and I scroll down, and we're going to skip Manage Account Profiles for now. I'm going to take you straight down to the Income Manager because it sort of links in with banking. If I select Income Manager, this is where it will show all of the reporting throughout all the services that you use at WisePay. Now, the frequently used reports, this will be blank for your school at the moment, but once you start using the reports, it will populate here of the reports that you use on a more frequent basis. So you have access to all of those there. The quick search obviously will give you all transactions that have been made today, or all transactions made since yesterday over the whole board, going back to say the last 12 weeks, and the stock level by product type and product code. With the search by bank and order references, if I select this one, now this is more to do with the banking side. So if you want to see all transactions sorted by a bank account, you can select the bank account and view all the transactions. We've also got date range added in there. So if you want to see just by a particular date range, then we recommend using report 10. We've also got exactly the same report. However, we've added in payment methods. So you could potentially view transactions by the bank account, but just want to see what cash has gone into that bank account. So again, that's a really useful one to use. Transactions sorted by bank account and date range and payment method and product type. So again, this is very similar to the one above. However, we've added product type on the end there as well. So it just gives you a breakdown of the different products that you have within WisePay. And if you just want to look for one particular product, then you can. We also have by bank reconciliation numbers, by payment references. Now, the payment references, this will be once a parent has made that payment, they will get their own unique payment reference. So they may call up and say, I paid for the trip on this date, here's my payment reference. And you can select by payment reference, type in the parent's payment reference, and it will bring up that transaction. We also have by bank statement batch number and the date of the batch number. So where we have our banking tab and we have lots of different batch numbers coming through, you can also search by batch number here. We also have by batch number and date range. And then we have the product summary report. So again, it's by batch number, date, or by manual payment batch number, or the batch date range and bank account. Now, bear in mind, although I can take you through all of these reports, we give you access to every single report within WisePay that links into obviously all of your products. However, it could be that you actually only use maybe 3 or 4 out of each section. So please don't stress too much. It's only, we have to add everything, but it could be potentially that you only use maybe 3 or 4 and they will get put in your frequently used reports. But we give you access to everything just so you can have a play around with the reports and see what ones work for you. If I go down to search by payment methods, this will give us a breakdown again, so we can search by cash, check, card, consent, bursary, etc. And again, we can do that with report 14. It's pretty much exactly the same. However, we can search also by a date range for that. We've also got payment category. So payment category and a payment method by a date range, or we can do by the product name. So again, if you have a trip, say for example, you may have 5 trips, but you want to search for one particular trip, then you can search for one particular trip with the payment method and date range also. We also have the payment method grouped into totals by date range. And manual payments. Now, manual payments is sort of an overall manual payment report. So this will show you everything that has been paid in via cash, check, card, consent, and it will be everything within one report. Obviously, we also have the refund report there as well. So this is a refund report that you can search by date and by bank account just to see how many refunds have been made. Obviously, for the search by categories and products, this is mainly linked to your modules. So this will be by payment category and all transactions, again, by date range, by student and date range, by school year and date range, or by class and date range. We also have by product name, so you can just search, for example, again, if you have one trip in particular, you can search for one product. We also have product name and a date range if you want to say split it, so you want to only see transactions for say a month or for a week. We also have by product name, date range, and bank account. By date range, group by product title and order total. And again, by date range, group by order date, category payment, and order totals. We also have by product name, student and date range, again by school year as well and date range, again class if needed, as well as that date range there. And we also have by ledger code and cost center and department identifier. Now these 3 link into your trips. So where you may have a trip and you have, say, inputted, if I go back and just show you as an example, within a trip, if I select the edit option, obviously here we have a department ID, we have cost center and a ledger code. If you wish to add in your own unique reference to these, then you can also run a report through the ledger code, cost center, or department ID as well. So the reports relate to these 3 tabs. If I go back into Income Manager, we also have search by student. So if there's a particular student you want to search by, or by student and date range, this works really well if you just want to see what the student has paid for since they've been at WisePay. Have a look and see what has been paid up to date. Again, search by class. So if there's a particular class, you want to look at all transactions for that class. And again, via year group as well and a date range. You can also search by key stages. Now, again, this depends on if it's primary, secondary, etc. If it's a primary, we can add in the key stages there and search by the key stages if required. We have search by audience group, so where we have lots of different audience groups, which I'll take you through in a second. There's a payment report for paid and unpaid for products. So again, if you have a trip going ahead and you have an audience group of say 30, you can select that audience group and just run that payment report to make sure that everyone has paid. Now, if you have breakfast and after school clubs with calendar, we also have the breakfast and after school clubs report inside. So this is for its own unique module. So where we may have a registration sheet or we want a list of the school clubs that are available with a student list or a student list with payment breakdown, just to see who has paid for the breakfast and after school clubs. Again, the registration sheet actually works more for attendance. So it could be that you print out a copy of this report each week and hand that to the staff or the organizer of the breakfast club, just so they can use that as a mark-off sheet to make sure that everyone is there. Now, resource management is actually only for a particular module that we use that is bespoke to certain schools. So we've removed that because you won't actually need that. We didn't want to confuse you as such. So resource management is really for our accommodations module, which you currently haven't purchased. So we've removed that one as it wouldn't necessarily be needed. We've also got the product installment payment report. This is a really good report to use. So anything where you have installment payments, again, if you're using, say, a residential trip where they pay for installments, an installment payment status, you can run a report by that or by a standard product payment report, or even a list of students who have not yet paid for that product. We also have usage reports. So this is really for audit trails. So we can have a look at all the unused accounts. So any accounts that have not yet purchased through WisePay, it will bring up a report of everyone that has not yet purchased through WisePay. The audit log by date. So again, this is just an audit trail for yourselves just to see what has been paid. You can audit by account, by the date, by a product, by date range on a product, and by account, product, and date. So it just gives you lots of different reports that you can use within that. The last two reports, again, you wouldn't necessarily need. The Smart Booker income report is relating to our Smart Booker module, which links into that module. Again, that's not something that you've purchased, and this is really for if you want to hire out your facilities, then we do have a Smart Booker module, and the income reports would show there. And again, for event-wise, this is where you have productions with seat allocations, and the event-wise income reports would be here for that module. Obviously, because you haven't purchased that, we've removed that just so it doesn't confuse you. You don't need those reports as such, so we've removed those for now. So we have lots of different reports that can be used, and again, you may only use a handful. However, we've given you them all just so you can have a play around and see what they look like. With all of our reports, and I'll just show you as an example, they all look exactly the same. But if I just take you through one of our reports just so that you can see what they look like. If I go to, say, by product name as an example, and if we've got all the products here listed on WisePay. Now, if I go down and I have a look for a product, hopefully we have transactions for one of these products. So I've just generated a report, and as you can see, here is the report that will show, and it will be exactly the same for a lot of the reports that you use. We have the date process, the name of the student ID, their year, their class, again, the payment reference, the batch ID, the batch date, the banking reference if there is one, the bank account that payment's gone into, the payment type, so whether it's a manual payment or it's an online card payment, the payment item, so again, we're just looking at the theatre trip to London. We also have the quantity, the price, the net line total, VAT if there is VAT added, and the gross line total. Now here we also have the functions to transfer or refund. So again, you can transfer a payment from, say, one sibling to another, or transfer the payment from one product to another. Again, there is a printable receipt. So if you want to print a receipt out for the parent if they request one. And we do have a little tab here that says notes. So you can add additional notes in if you wish. Now, if I scroll down to the bottom of this page, it will actually give me a total of all of the payments that have been made for the theatre trip. So you have a breakdown here. You can also print the reports, as the same with all reports, and you can also export to Excel. If you select export to Excel, it will start the download of that Excel sheet, and then again, you can obviously send to colleagues or do as you wish with that report. We do have an option to see more detail. So again, if you need a bit more of a breakdown, if we select see more detail, it just enables us to have options here. So if we click see more detail, we can see there is options here. So just to see that you have agreed and you've read the consent and all the medical information is up to date. So we can see that all of these parents or students have ticked yes, and they have confirmed. So again, if you do need to see a bit more of a breakdown, then you can click see more detail here. So if I go back to the dashboard area, and that is the income manager. So bear in mind, all administrators would have access to income manager other than view only accounts. However, for full access, administrators will only have access to will have access to banking as well, whereas the level 2 administrators will have access to income manager, but they will not be able to access the banking. Banking is really only for the finance staff. So if I take you through to manage account profiles, manage account profiles is where all of your students' data will sit. If I select manage account profiles, this will just give us the information around where our students' details are. Now here you can search for their surname via alphabetical, or you can type in their first or last name here. So just an example, if I search Joe, and we don't have anyone called Joe. If I search for an example, let's see if we've got Tom. Yep, we have Tom here. So we can click on Tom's account. We can log in as Tom. It gives us the information, so which year group, staff he's in. Now here I can select Tom's first or last name, and it will bring up the information. Now bear in mind, just to reiterate, we are on a demo site, so this is just dummy data that we're using today. So we can see that Tom is a staff. We've got the class details here. We have menu details, so meal register information. So again, if you are using Mealwise, then this would work really well because you can select a preference to what meals he would usually have on a weekly basis. And here we have the first contact details. So we have contact one, guardian, first name, last name, and the details here with the username and the password. Now, once that parent or a staff member has logged in for the first time, they do have the ability to change their password. Once they have changed their password, it will then show has password changed by guardian, and this will no longer show. Now, again, we do also have second contact details. So where you may have sensitive cases, where you may have two parents that are no longer together, therefore we do have second contact details also. So that gives them the ability to log in using their own username and email address here. What we also have, and we've recently added, is an open income manager student report. So this is also an extension of the income manager. Where we had an income manager search by student, what we can also do is if we tick this option here or select this option, it will just generate a report for that student and give us all of the payments that have been made for that student. So that can also be found under the student's details as well. If I scroll up, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to search for any class group, any year group, and I'm going to search for any because it could potentially be that you want to search just for a student or for a staff or an external account. It could be a staff reg, supplier, or a guest. I'm going to leave this as any, but here we have lots of different statuses. Now, it's currently defaulted to active, but where you may have levers that you want to look at archived folders, you can select the archived and select save, search, and it will give you all of your students that have been archived. Again, we can search for students that are in a disabled status. And we can also search any. If I search any and do not type in any student's name here, it will bring up every single person that has an account at WisePay. So if I scroll down here, as you can see, we have lots of different students there. And as we were discussing the levers process earlier, here is where you'd actually do your levers process as well. So as you can see, there's a levers option here. Now, if I select this option here for Harry and scroll all the way down to the bottom and select save all ticked accounts as levers. So now that lever has been marked as archived. They've been moved to year 50, which is the archive folder, and they are in class RO 2020. So now if I search for archived and search bar there, I'll now see that Harry has been moved to that archive folder and he's been moved to year 50 and class RO 2020. Okay, so that's the manage account profiles area. The new account, this is to create a new manual account. Now we would highly suggest that you do not create a manual account if you have, say, a manual template that's being brought over, or if you have an MIS system that your students are being brought over with, because what could potentially happen is you could duplicate the account. If you duplicate the account, then it could potentially mean that that same student could be making payments on both accounts, and then we would have to merge the accounts. All of the student data will come through from your MIS system or from the manual template or from student auto upload via an API. So it's very rare that you would need to create a new account manually. Again, if you are creating a new account, if I select student account here, it'll just give you a warning and give you some information that all students must be created in your MIS system and brought through. Otherwise, there will be duplicate accounts. So just make sure that that student account isn't already on your MIS system before adding it manually. If I return to the dashboard area, I'm going to take you through the manual payment manager. So again, this is all around manual payments. So if I select the manual payment manager, this will give us a drop down of everything within that payment area. So here we have all the products showing on WisePay. So if we go down to maybe the one we've used, we've got a theatre trip here to London. Now, what we can do here is we can add a manual payment for someone. So if I go either for the search bar, or if I type in my account, WisePay Tech Support, if I select that option there, I can go down and I can make a payment either via check, cash, bank transfer, bursary, consent, subsidy, voucher, a manual card transaction, or a direct debit. So this would really be used if, say, a parent would come into reception with cash and say, I want to make a payment via cash, and we would add it here. So the administrators would go in, they would search for the student, search for the trip, type in the payment method. We can pop in here, say, I want to add £10. You can add a check number reference if you wish. You can add a note to explain that it may be that they don't have internet access or something along those lines. You can maybe put in your initials, the administrator's initials, just to see so that we can see who's made that manual payment. And then you select the make manual payment. Once that manual payment has been made, it will then appear with a green tick to the right hand side to say the manual payment has gone through. What we can also do is we can print out a receipt. So it could be that the parent is there at the time that you're completing the manual payment. Then you can also print out a receipt for the parent. Now, manual payment, obviously it's there, it can be used. However, one thing we would say is obviously because we're an online payment system, you're trying to get your parents away from making cash or check payments. You want everyone to be able to pay online. So I wouldn't necessarily make it available or notify parents that they can do that. Obviously, I would only really use it in sensitive cases or where children have brought cash in. Now, as you can see, the green tick has been displayed. So if I select the printable receipt, this will give us a pop-up and will allow us to print that receipt for the parent. So that is the manual payment manager. If I go back to the dashboard, and I'll take you through the manage audience groups. So manage audience groups, again, this is used really for, say, trips and products where you may have lots of different students attending, or it could be that the audience group only relates to individual students. So where you may have a ski trip, for example, and you have 30 spaces, those 30 spaces are now taken. What you want to do is to complete an audience group. So we can add an audience group and enter, say here, ski trip 2021, and add that as the audience group title. Now what we can do here is we can search for the students, so we could go through, find those 30 students. They may all be in one class, which obviously would be a lot easier. They may even be in one year. So if we search year 7s, and we can see here, for example, Katie is attending, Olivia's attending, Sam's attending. Now, once you have all of those students and you select yes to the membership, we can save those group details. So now for Ski Trip 2021, we now have these 3 students. So only these 3 students will be able to see that product. So where we have, say, for example, our trips and visits, it currently defaults that everyone can view that trip. So where the audience groups would come into play would be as if we went back into the trip and we select edit on that trip, can only be viewed by selected groups. Now, if I tick that option, we can see here we've now got that saved group as Ski Trip 2021. So you can link students to a particular audience group. So only those 3 students will be able to see that product. Now within Manage Audience Group, we also have editor groups. Obviously, we have a default editor group. Please do not delete this editor group because this is for your administrators in order for them to edit the product. And again, for the WisePay staff, so for support to be able to log in and help you if you require it using the default editor group. But again, you can add editor groups if you wish. Obviously, this is only for administrators. Now the staff groups, again, you can create staff groups where you have, say, parents' evening. It may be that you need to add a staff group in there. So you may need to add, say, for example, we have butterfly class here. If I select butterfly class, and we can see that the teacher for butterfly class is Claire Smith. So when you're creating parents evening, you want to link that staff group to that parents evening so that Claire can see what parents have booked in for parents evening for that night. So that is the staff groups. And we also have archived audience groups. So again, if you're finished with an audience group, we wouldn't recommend deleting it unless obviously you've never used that audience group before. But what you can do is select the archive and it will go into the archive folder below. So if I return to the dashboard, now we also have the communications hub. Now the communications hub is firstly used to send out username and passwords. Now the communications hub, depending on how you wish to do that and if the communications hub has been purchased, you can send out username and passwords via letters. So it gives you some information here. You can search by, say, a year group. If we search for year 7 as an example and select next, you can download all the username and passwords to Excel and send them out via mail merge, or if you have another way at the school that you wish to send them out, then you can download that into a report. Or you can download the username and password letters via Microsoft Word. So this will be one A4 letter per pupil, so you can print those out and hand them to the class so they can hand them out to the students. Personally, we would recommend doing this via email. Just again, it's more secure. To do that via email, if you select the email option, and there's lots of different options within the emails, but what we're looking at is the username and passwords by student, or username and passwords by distribution list, or username and passwords via WisePay audience group. Now, what I would recommend when you're first starting with WisePay is to add an audience group, either called the whole school or to add an audience group per year groups. Now, what that means is when you select username and password for an audience group, you can actually have an audience group, for example, that says the whole school. If you select next, it will bring you up all students for the whole school, and you can send the username and passwords out in bulk via one click rather than having to do them all separately. Now, you could potentially do them via year group, or you could potentially do them via class group. It's completely up to you, and that's all within the email tab. Now, before we send out any emails or any communication, the first thing we need to do is we need to opt in new accounts. Now, if I select the opt in new accounts option, we get the pop-up appear. And this is basically saying at the moment, when all the student data goes through to WisePay, it's currently set to not set. Now, all we're doing is we're selecting yes, opt all new accounts in to say yes, they would like to receive email and text messages. Bear in mind, parents can change this at any point. They can contact the administrators at the school, or they can go in themselves via the parent view and change yes to no if they do not want to be contacted. Now, WisePay will never contact any of the parents. This is all done through the school. So it will only be the administrators that ever contact the parents. You're just using WisePay in order to complete that. So we would select yes to opt in all new accounts, which means that everyone can now receive a text message or an email. Now, all of the details are the same. They all look exactly the same. If I select the default message content, we have a breakdown of everything here. And it's the same for the email. Everything is laid out exactly the same. So if you want to send an email out, you can send out balance reminders for dinner money, payment messages. So where you have a trip and you've got an installment product, you can send out a message to say that you still need to make that payment, or to say that payment has been made and this is your status, this is how much you've got left to owe, or if it's been paid in full. We also have whole school group messages. So a personalized message, you can personalize a message and send it to say a whole year group or a tutor group. So again, this would work really well if the school's closed. If, for example, if there's a snow day, you can send out a whole group message to say the school is closed. Again, this works well for bulk messaging. So again, you can send a message out to the WisePay audience group, a year group, a distribution list, and a tutor group. Distribution list works very similar to an audience group. The distribution list is added within the communications hub, whereas an audience group is added within the manage audience groups. We also have a usage reminder reports. So again, you can send out an email to users who have not yet used WisePay since a given date. So if people haven't ever used WisePay, but they've been, say, on the system for quite a while, you can send out an email or just sort of have a look and just see who hasn't yet logged in, and it could just be that you give them a little prompt. Now, if you've got free school meal messages, you can send out free school meal expiry date messages here, and again, parent evening itinerary if you need to. Now, that's just the email tab. You can do exactly the same with text messages. There's an option here for text credits. So it just goes to show you how many you have left and what's available, what's been used. Now, again, you can use text, you can use emails. We also have default message content. So if you want to write your own message, so again, if I select send a message to a student, here we'd have the first name, last name. Now, please enter the message you wish to send. Now, it could be that you create a default template and then save the changes so that then once we go into the email for that student, the default message content will then come up here. So again, we've selected via student, so we can go to say a student as an example and select next. And we can send an email. We just need to make sure that there is an email address in there for them. If there's no email address, then obviously an email cannot be sent. So make sure there is an email address so that we can send that communication out. Now we also have web address, so you can create a link here as well. It just gives you the information to do that. So create bold text, you just need to put these icons between the bold text. To create underlined text, use these options here. And again, if you want to send a web address link, or maybe it's a school's website or a newsletter, then you've got that link there and you just add those options in between that. So if I go back slightly and select the communications hub again, we also have the distribution list. So this will give us a breakdown of all of the distribution lists. So again, it's just like creating an audience group. You could do that by distribution list. And we also have message history. So any messages that have been sent out via text message or email will be in this option here. So again, if we've sent a message out to a student, we can select here and look at the text message and email history between certain dates just to see what has been sent out. So that is the communications hub, and that's how the communications hub is used. Obviously, Forms Manager, we have gone over in a separate training, and Forms Manager is only really part of the quick links if that module has been taken on. And that's obviously where the Forms Manager can be linked into a trip. So we have medical consent or parental consent forms. You can link these to a trip so that the parents have to complete these in order to make a payment. And the last one is the exporter tool option. Now, the exporter tool is where you have an MIS system or a manual template that you've run the data. What we do is we add it to our secure test area first. So this is the exporter tool. So for example, if you have a SIMS MIS system and you run the data to WisePay, we firstly run that data to test. So it goes into our secure test environment. We then ask you to check the data that's pulled through. So all the data will be here, priority 1 contact, priority 2 contact, make sure everything is correct. Once you are happy with the data, we will delete all the accounts from the test environment and then we will run the data to live. That's when it will show within manage account profiles. But beforehand, we will obviously run this data to test. There's also a log file as well. So anything that's been run to test, it'll give us a file of all of the student data and when that run. So that's just the exporter tool. So if I go back one, the other two options we have is really just a user guide library. So again, if you struggle with any of the modules or any of the quick links options, there is a user guide here and there's PDFs of lots of different modules, banking, for example, meals, and we have income manager, so how all the reports work. There's lots of different guides there. And the communication material, this is really just for your new school. This is communication material. So if you want launch materials and newsletter inserts, just to let them know that WisePay is coming. Again, if there's new intake reminder of materials, so food and drink. User frequently asked questions. We also have the WisePay logo as well. So if you would like to add the WisePay logo to your school website, all of this is available through the communication material library. So this is quick links. This is what we've gone through today. That is, I would recommend, say, step 2 of the process. Quick links is its own process with all of the tabs below. Obviously, step 3 is the WisePay services, the tabs at the top and the user parent view. And step 1, obviously, we've gone through, which is the modules. So I hope you found that beneficial. Obviously, if you do get stuck or wish to ask any further questions, then please do email us at support@wisepay.co.uk, or please do give us a call. Thank you.